continue the general debate. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Portugal to introduce an address by the head of state.
Mr. President, Mr. Secretary General, I have the honor to introduce His Excellency the Prime Minister of Portugal, António Costa. I thank you.
Sr. Presidente da Assembleia Geral, Sr. Secretário.
President of the General Assembly, Secretary General, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I should like to congratulate Ambassador Volkan Bozkır upon his election as President of the General Assembly during the 75th anniversary year of the United Nations. The United Nations is more indispensable than ever to meet the challenges which ignore borders and cannot be addressed by taking a self-centered approach. We know how much pressure the multilateral system is under. Firstly, in the context of a return to power struggles on a global scale, we are seeing increasing limitations in cooperation for responses to shared challenges and threats. Secondly, whole new domains are emerging which require multilateral solutions to define normative and cooperative systems. The so-called Fourth Industrial Revolution is both a challenge and an opportunity. Whether we're looking at artificial intelligence and the use of robots, setting up intelligent networks and managing infrastructures and 5G data, or the restructuring of whole swaths of the economy, the impact of new technologies on the economy, on the world of work, on the relationship between states will require new rules of behaviour on an international front. The United Nations must play a central role in defining these by providing compromise solutions which can defend the general interest. Thirdly, international organisations themselves have revealed difficulties when it comes to responding to challenges and threats. The case of the Security Council is a paradigm. This exhibits a limited capacity to react to crises and conflicts, and its composition does not reflect the geopolitical realities of the 21st century. Portugal therefore calls for an increase in the number of permanent and non-permanent members, particularly from the African continent and, including at the least, Brazil and India. Despite these challenges, the UN remains indispensable to preserve global peace and security, as well as sustainable development and the defence and promotion of human rights. And this Assembly, which I have the pleasure of addressing, continues to be the Parliament of humanity. There is no other. Portugal will therefore continue its steadfast support for the United Nations system, both at political and financial levels. We maintain an ambitious agenda of commitments aiming to strengthen the ability of the UN and its member states in their response to the main issues on the international agenda, including the Sustainable Development Goals, climate change, migration, hosting refugees, and issues linked to the sea and the sustainability of the oceans. The leadership and reforms introduced by the Secretary-General, António Guterres, are essential to make this organisation's action more effective and agile. He can therefore count upon our full support. President, Secretary-General, the current context of global urgency means that we must further strengthen cooperation between states and international organisations in our response to the health challenges and its socio-economic consequences. The United Nations is a central element of these efforts, including through the UN's comprehensive response to COVID-19, which is a response plan promoted by the Secretary-General. We support its implementation and value the coordinating role of the World Health Organization. The pandemic has shone a spotlight on many of our vulnerabilities in the areas of health, the economy and social cohesion. We must rapidly return to growth and employment and increase the resilience of our economies, our societies and the state. This will be an essential priority for Portugal when, in the first semester of 2021, our country will hold the presidency of the Council of the European Union. In this regard, we must bolster development cooperation and the ability of the UN system to act in this area. Portugal has increased its contributions to a number of UN agencies, in particular the World Health Organization, the International Organization for Migration, the UN Refugee Agency, the World Food Programme and UNICEF. Combating economic inequalities is worthy of particular attention given their truly cross-cutting dimension. International security is not compatible with an inequitable distribution of resources at a global level, particularly when this is combined with demographic imbalances and phenomena such as environmental deterioration, which are so often associated with this. We need a new global commitment based upon human dignity, which balances real access to opportunity and hope. The crisis caused by this pandemic must not therefore serve as an excuse to interrupt policies which are aimed at countering the current climate emergency, which is an existential threat for each and every one of us. Quite the contrary, we must step up coordination between Agenda 2030 for Sustainable Development and the Paris Climate Agreement, thus helping to create societies which are less vulnerable to the inherent impacts of extreme climate events. In the same vein, we must further investigate the relationship between oceans and climate change, paying particular attention to small island states. In this regard, Portugal reaffirms its commitment to co-organise in 2021 with Kenya the United Nations Conference on the Oceans, and counts upon the participation of all United Nations member states at the highest level. President, Secretary-General. Fully guaranteeing human rights will require a constant process of improvement. Portugal advocates an open discussion as part of a critical dialogue between peers so as to bolster the promotion and respect of human rights. Together with our European Union partners, we reaffirm the defence of free, plural and tolerant societies which rejects racism, xenophobia, homophobia and populism and work for inclusion, gender equality and freedom of expression. The pandemic has placed new demands on the promotion of and protection of human rights. Portugal responded immediately to these demands, in particular by extending access to our National Health Service to all migrants and refugees, whatever their status or legal situation, under conditions identical to those of our national citizens. Portugal played an active role in hosting migrants and refugees, thus undeniably exhibiting its solidarity. We reaffirm our unreserved support for the Global Compact for Safe, Orderly and Regular Migration. Moreover, in the context of the International Organization for Migration, we are one of the pilot countries for its implementation. Portugal is a pioneer regarding the abolition of the death penalty and opposes its use under any circumstances. In this context, I call for the adoption of the biennial resolution on the moratorium on the death penalty, which will be presented during this session of the General Assembly. This year celebrates a quarter century of the 4th Global Conference on Women, and Portugal reiterates its commitment to the promotion of women's rights. It is important to redouble the attention which we devote to gender-based violence, to rights and to sexual and reproductive health in the face of challenges which are exacerbated by the pandemic. President, Secretary-General, despite the pandemic, many wars and conflicts still persist, which is why we support the recent call by the Secretary-General, António Guterres, for a global ceasefire. Portugal is currently contributing troops to 7 peacekeeping operations and special political missions. Our national participation in MINUSCA in the Central African Republic is an example of this, particularly because we provide the rapid reaction force, which is crucial to accomplishing this mission's mandate. Persistent high levels of violence in the Sahel increase the need for international coordination, and this is an ambition Portugal shares, particularly through our participation in MINUSMA in Mali. We are following the efforts of the international community to find political solutions to conflicts which afflict numerous countries in the world. We believe that the two-state solution is the only one capable of resolving the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, that the nuclear agreement with Iran must be preserved and fully upheld by all parties, that mediation and compromise processes led by the United Nations will allow us to overcome those serious crises which are currently ongoing in Syria, Yemen or Libya. We also call for a peaceful and inclusive political solution in Venezuela. Current challenges show how important international partnerships are, particularly the tripartite cooperation between the UN, the African Union and the European Union. It was under Portuguese leadership that the relations between the European Union and Africa were institutionalized at the highest level. And during its presidency of the European Union in 2021, Portugal will strive to further cement the partnership between Europe and Africa. The role of the European Union as a global actor, open to the world, a defender of multilateralism and beneficial trade for all will be a priority of our presidency of the European Union. Many varied organisations contribute positively to the international order, which is based on rules and on a desire to cooperate. Amongst these, I of course wish to underscore the Community of Portuguese language countries, which brings together nations from 4 continents. Under the current presidency of Cabo Verde and the upcoming presidency of Angola, the CPLP attests to the possibility of partnerships and of building bridges between peoples and countries united by a shared language, which has a World Day on the 5th of May, proclaimed recently by UNESCO. In this context, I welcome the resolution of the post-electoral impasse in Guinea-Bissau and hope that this will issue in a new cycle of stability and prosperity for the country. Moreover, I express my deep solidarity to Mozambique, which has been the victim of terrorist attacks and attempts to destabilize its northern regions. President, Secretary-General, Portugal is a country which is open to the world, which advocates dialogue and a system of equitable rules underpinned by stability and predictability. We know where arbitrary action, aggressive nationalism and the law of the jungle have led us in the past. 75 years ago, the founders of the United Nations had the courage to lay the foundations of a new world order based on international law, on equality between sovereign states, on the dignity of humankind. This was a triumph for hope. Today, we must not succumb to cynicism. It is our duty to cherish and strengthen what we have achieved together, thus guaranteeing a better future. A strong United Nations is crucial for the well-being of each and every one of us. Thank you very much, and I wish you a successful General Assembly.
On behalf of the General Assembly, I wish to thank the Prime Minister of Portugal for the statement just made.